everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. Happy Sunday. I hope you guys are doing well. We're going to be talking all about the astrology of April 2024, which I'm calling Baptism by Fire. If you guys like my content, you want to see more of it, make sure you click the bell button below. This will subscribe you to the channel and you'll be alerted as to when I have new videos coming out. We're here every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. All right, so guys, this is the big month. Everybody knows there are some real rumbles in the month of April. I want to remind everybody there is tons of content on my channel. We have got horoscopes for the month of May for all 12 rising signs, along with also the solar eclipse video. Make sure you guys check that out if you want more insight as to what that means for your personal sun, moon, or rising placement. Equally, we're going to have a Mercury retrograde. I've got a video out for that as well. But I just want to remind you guys of that because these are some topics we're going to be covering. And if you stay tuned, we are going to go throughout this month and also talk about some of the other ingresses and a very action-packed full moon in Scorpio at the end of the month in April. All right, so what do we got going on, right? We have so much stuff. Obviously, April kicks off with a Mercury retrograde on the 1st. Mercury will be turning retrograde in the sign of Aries. It'll stay there the entire time, and we're feeling the effects of the retrograde really into the month of May. So what does it mean? Take a look at where Aries is in your chart. Mercury rules communication, travel, documents, business, and much more. So with Mercury turning retrograde in a fire sign that's ruled by Mars, things can get a little testy. Make sure you're doing your damnedest to back up your hard drives, read the fine print, move slowly, because in this particular sign of Aries, Mercury has the tendency to leap before it looks. And then we have to kind of go back and eat our words or, course correct something and fix something. And the effects of this Mercury retrograde are particularly potent because it's going to be coming into contact actually with the sun just after the solar eclipse in Aries on the 8th. So there is some kind of epiphany or personal realization that we're going to be having. It'll also dance with Chiron and the North Node, helping us all figure out how to better heal ourselves. And as many of you guys know, we're now in the astrological new year. So whether you wait until that sun ingressed into Aries or you're waiting for this new moon, April is the month to get our shift together. It's a great time to make changes during a retrograde. Don't fear it. It's a time to really turn inward and think about our personal goals, how we can be better, smarter, faster, and more in touch with our inner selves. So it's a great time to kind of start over and kind of have a blank slate or commit to new personal goals, physical goals as well. For those of you guys who are wanting to get in better shape, because Aries is a fire sign ruled by Mars, this is a time to really have a very pioneering can-do attitude. As many of you guys know, it really takes at least a month to really get into the grind of a new goal and to see that through repetition. So wherever Aries is in your chart, this is where you're getting a fine tune-up, and you have some support also from that solar eclipse. Now, the solar eclipse will be in Aries. This will take place on the 8th. We're going to be seeing this happen around 19 degrees, exact conjunction to Chiron. Holy cow, guys, it is a big one. This is going to be seen all across the United States and even parts of Mexico, South America. It's a really big one, and you guys are going to see this unfold over the next immediate 100 days. Now, this eclipse will get triggered at several other different points this year, like when we see Mars go into Cancer and square it, and also next year as we see Neptune and Saturn ingress into Aries. I see it as kind of like a precursor, kind of giving us a bit of a preview for what that transit will actually mean, as we see the conjunction between Saturn and Neptune happen very rarely. So this will be basically a dawn of a new era. It's going to be really big for our spiritual pursuits and also our personal beliefs. We're also going to see the big boom of Jupiter conjunct Uranus taking place closer to April 20th. This is going to be big for sudden amounts of, financial change. This is also big shifts for the freedom movement and for people who are just loving being more independent and growing closer to a healthier set of values, better self-esteem, and also a better connection with the planet. But out in the world, it's going to cause some rocks and rumbles with the financial system, and obviously lots of talk about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency as this transit coincides with the halvening. And then finally, we're going to see some Pluto squares. So as that Sun ingresses into Taurus and Venus ingresses into Taurus, they're going to square off with Pluto and Aquarius, where these fixed Pluto squares are going to bring some definite power challenges. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And then finally, we will see a new Mars-Saturn cycle that's going to be beginning during the time of the solar eclipse in Aries. We're really looking at Mars because Mars is the ruler. So with Mars coming into a 1-degree conjunction with Saturn, it's very obvious that hard work, determination, and the willingness to be a spiritual warrior is necessary for these brand new beginnings. But also, Saturn wants to kind of pump the brakes. It doesn't want Mars to move forward. We may feel tired, lethargic, and ready to throw in the towel. So it's important to really look at where this Mars-Saturn conjunction is in your chart. It'll be showing you where you're going to be working hard and holding this vision for your future in your mind's eye, where you have to pray, meditate on it, and be kind of strategic when it comes to managing your energy levels. We'll talk about how this will manifest, but we've already seen some of the close proximity between the Saturn and Mars already begin since Mars has been in Pisces. I saw many people message me and comment about the Baltimore Bridge. This is, kind of connected to Mars, which can be about attacks and water and boating because it's in a sign associated with Neptune. I do see more of this, especially because Saturn deals with structures. So we're going to be seeing whether or not things are structurally sound. And I anticipate that we may see some issues with flooding and water as well. So it's not just going to be ships or the Navy. It could also potentially be dams and levees. We can see some issues with this also. So let's talk themes for the month outside of, that massive lineup, which honestly for me as an astrologer, a little terrifying, but I'm trying to replace fear with excitement because, the universe is going to do what it's going to do. But I have much more of like a positive view on this and on a personal level, not just the chaos that this is going to be bringing the world. Now, I call this period, the month of April, baptism by fire because, Aries represents the first sign of the zodiac. It is seen as the ram, but it's also known as the lamb. So it can be a purification period, a period of personal sacrifice, hard work, and dedication. And this represents the first breath of life. That's what Aries is all about. So for me, this is the turning point where humanity really wakes up. We realize that it's a bare knuckle brawl for the future. And the only way that we're going to see it through is if we, on a personal level, take the necessary steps to be able to heal ourselves and also heal the world. Remember that with eclipses, something is eclipsed out. So as many of you guys are watching this at the end of March, you're still kind of coming off of that very emotional lunar eclipse in Libra, where many of us are realizing that old structures in our lives or old relationships are now changing. They're breaking apart, but some are growing closer and becoming stronger. But with an eclipse, something's eclipsed out. There's this darkness, right? At least here in the United States, everybody's making a big fuss about, the effects of this eclipse and what kind of chaos it may bring. But literally the moon is eclipsing with the sun. So we're going to see that several minutes of darkness, up to 4 minutes long in some parts of visibility. And it's pretty crazy because when you guys think about it, some astrologers do connect and correlate each minute as being associated with a year. So some astrologers are predicting that this will be impacting the United States for the better part of the next 4 years. Well, you don't need a rocket scientist or an astrologer to tell you that things are really happening here. But I want you guys to think back about the eclipse that happened in 2017. That was the last time that we had the great American solar eclipse. And if we think about what happened 3 years later, and that eclipse lasted for 3 minutes, we had 2020. So does the eclipse mean something happens on that day? Does it take 4 years? Really, I think this is something that we're going to see the most impactful the first 3 months or 100 days after the solar eclipse. So basically April, May, June, going into July, that's when we're going to see some real action. And August is going to be a real turning point as well because I've been looking at that full moon in Aquarius that will square Uranus, and I think that's when the wheels fall off. So it doesn't mean something has to happen the day of the eclipse. Some of you guys are already feeling the effects of the solar eclipse now because we're in that energy. We're just days out. Some of you will see it unfold over the next 3 or 4 months. Be patient and wait for other people to kind of catch up. I know some of us can feel very impatient with all of these energies in Aries, but there is a need to kind of reassess and also reevaluate what we are doing on a personal level, turning down the volume and not getting distracted by what's going on in the world. And remember that, like I said, because eclipses are dark, it only takes a little bit of light to illuminate the dark. I was thinking about this, and like I've seen so many people on on YouTube, on Twitter, I've seen so many people on TikTok, all these people talking about the religious kind of connections to this eclipse and all of the cities that it's going through, you know, all the cities of Nivea, and everybody talking about this kind of connection to the Bible. And it got me kind of thinking about a passage from Matthew 24:29, where it says, "And there will be signs in the sun and the moon and stars. On the earth, distress of nations, perplexity because of the roaring of the sea and waves. People fainting with fear and foreboding what is coming on the world. For the powers of heavens will be shaken, and they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with a power of great glory." Now, no, I'm not preaching to you guys, although it is Sunday, but I think about how throughout history, ancient history, regardless of the civilization, there's always been some kind of connection to the skies, right? To the sun and the moon and the stars. Astrology has been around for thousands of years, and for many ancient civilizations, this is how they used, they used to predict things. Solar eclipses were seen as negative omens, basically, for kings or for nations, and that it may be a great time of change, purification, and things turning over. Whether or not you're going to go out and see the eclipse, that's neither here nor there. But me personally, I feel like this is a time, because the sun is getting eclipsed out, that we need to keep our vibrations high. Ideally, we're kind of setting some positive intentions that day. We're making sure we're putting up our little energy bubble as we're going out into the world, and realizing that emotions and energy is going to be on overdrive. But I look to this and I'm like, yeah, of course, the Bible talked about if you needed a sign, you were going to see that kind of coming through the sun, stars, and moons. But that it was supposed to be signaling that there would be the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Sun, Aries, man. Okay, so I'm like, okay, there's your sign. And this represents a brand new cycle that is starting, the healing on a personal level that will come with our relationship to ourselves, right? 19 degrees is a Libra degree. We see this in Aries with an exalted sun, so healing the relationship to ourselves. Also, Chiron is there, so it's really kind of bringing up this wounding that we need to move through. Ruled by Mars, which is conjunct Saturn. And so this is like this great activation of a lot of spiritual warriors that are kind of waking up and realizing that they're ready to take action in their own life to be at their best capabilities, so that way they can help other people. And I think a lot of people are becoming aware of that. So I think this is really interesting. Obviously, I think that this is going to be about some people turning to faith or spiritual practice. I think that is a huge theme as well. So that might be something that you guys are implementing throughout this next month and into the next several years. Especially when I think about how, this will be unfolding between really immediately now and next spring. And in 2025 and 2026, we will see Saturn enter into Aries and Neptune enter into Aries as well. They'll kind of bop in and out between Aries and Pisces, and then fully ingress together and conjunct in February of 2026. Well, I did a little research on this, and I thought about this, and I was like, okay, what's really the message here? When was the last time that this happened? Oh, I don't know, over 4,000 years ago. It's been about 4,500 years since we've seen Saturn and Neptune conjunct in the sign of Aries, which is a really interesting period. This was known as the Bronze Age. So the Bronze Age was a period in human evolution where we saw so many things develop that really have led us to where we are now in modern age, especially when it comes to metal and warfare. And it was known as the Bronze Age because this is when humans mastered the art of creating metal, which led obviously to significant advancements in many aspects of life. But one of the most, I think, important developments during the Bronze Age was an alloy made from copper and tin. So this new material was stronger, more durable than stone, and it allowed for the creation of effective tools and weapons, right? Aries, the head of the spear. And it greatly improved efficiency of tasks such as farming, hunting, and warfare. Because during the Bronze Age, we saw, development of the first, permanent villages. We were kind of shifting away from being nomadic. We were finding camps and kind of, staying put. We began to settle in one place, and they had to develop new technologies for growing their populations. So this included the invention of the metal plow, which allowed for more efficient farming, development of rope, which obviously was significant for a number of things. I think it was a time where obviously warfare was becoming more significant as well. When I think about the Bronze Age and the connection to the Egyptian civilization, they were at the center of trade and commerce during this time. And they also became known for innovation with burial practices, building tombs and things like that. So there's definitely going to be a huge shift coming with this ingress that we're going to see in this next year, which is going to be about self-sufficiency, self-defense, innovations in hunting, innovations in tools, but also we're going to see innovations with war and anything that is going to be connected to combat. So why do I talk about this if it's not happening for another year and a half? Because this solar eclipse is marking this period where I think we're kind of learning where are some of these things hindering us? Where is war hindering us? How is it helping us? Where is being combative and argumentative actually kind of casting us out and not allowing us to connect with other people and also our true inner essence? And then 2, I think it's going to be showing us where we need to be more innovative. We need to be learning new ways when it comes to supporting and also sustaining our civilization and being able to move forward in a way that is beneficial for all mankind. So the pros that I see that are going to come in this next month is the solar eclipse marks a new beginning for all of us. The Mercury retrograde is realizing our great power, right? Realizing our great power and that it's mind over matter. Throughout the retrograde, we're going to be focusing on getting into alignment with what is right for us. And that may not be somebody else's truth. That may not be somebody else's perspective. But it's about being brave and being willing to fight or stand up for what we believe in and our own personal rights. Being brave enough to speak our mind and not being afraid to be unliked. I think that's a huge theme with Mercury retrograde. Conjunct Chiron. I'm a victim of this right now. I guess I'm feeling that as this conjunction is happening over my moon. And I'm definitely kind of feeling like I'm looking at conflict differently, or I'm looking at, feedback or criticism differently. I'm seeing it as kind of a gauge for being like, okay, we're hitting on some situations where we're kind of going over the target. I don't know if you guys are feeling like that with this retrograde, but that's me. And also where, sometimes doing difficult things help us expand as a person. It pushes us beyond our comfort zone. Nobody wants to get up early in the morning to hit the gym or, stay a little bit later at work to get some extra work in. We don't always feel comfortable as we're pushing our bodies to our, out of our limits, or we're not always feeling comfortable when we're going into new situations. But in that fear or that discomfort, there is lots of room for growth. And I think that's what this next month is going to be about. It's going to be about getting stronger and also learning about our own personal needs. I see that, the conjunction to Chiron is finally showing up and healing some kind of a wound in our life. And if we're not already aware of it, we're going to become aware of it. And this is also really going to touch on some big themes revolving around veterans and army matters, because it's happening in the sign that deals with the military. Now, that's just a general blanket kind of statement. When I look at Mars going through Pisces with a conjunction to Saturn, I've said that we are going to see where some military personnel is going to want to resist orders, or we're going to start seeing them breaking ranks. I think that's a theme for the next several years, but you're going to start to see it now. Or some military branches and personnel acting in ways that are very cruel and unusual. Unfortunately, we see that with Mars, Saturn. The other thing that we're going to see is challenges with anything involving water and like the Navy. We're already seeing through, parts of, I want to say it's the Black Sea. We're starting to see warships that are moving through with Russia, very much Mars and Pisces. So that conjunction to Saturn is going to represent where there's going to be tension on like basically borders or lines where seas are meeting, or where there may be like ports. So we might see some conflict in some of these places. Now, for most of us, though, I think it's going to be about getting stronger and learning about self-protection, and also learning about our amendment rights. As Mercury turns retrograde in the third decan of Aries, it's going to be about us learning the laws, at least here in the United States. But some of you guys in other parts of the world, you may be questioning whether or not you are in alignment with what leaders or government laws or regulations are going down. This is a time where I think a lot more people are going to be reading into bills, laws, legislation more than ever before, because Mercury turning retrograde indicates that we're kind of digging deep. The other thing that I think about is that we have the ability to really kind of shift our frame of mind with this retrograde. Mercury deals with the mind, but it also deals with communication. It deals with health. So a retrograde can be about where we're making physical changes, which is positively impacting our mind. Now, here are the cons. I have to give them to you guys just so you're aware. I have a grave concern for potential health issues for a number of reasons. One being the solar eclipse is conjunct Chiron, so it is going to represent a bit of a curveball or a wild card that's coming when it comes to a healing crisis. Here in the United States, we are now in our Chiron return taking place in the 4th house, which is going to deal with younger people, homeowners, anything involving home and family and personal property rights. Definitely a theme, as we're seeing in some cities in the United States, that there are major issues going on with squatters and squatters' rights, and people having issues being able to actually have the ability to remove people from their homes or feeling like their homes are being impeded on. So I think that's a literal demonstration of the astrology. But I think that, health issues come up when we start to see like a Mercury retrograde sometimes, and being that Mercury is going to retrograde in conjunction to Chiron, mental health issues, okay? And in the background, Mars is the ruler conjunct Saturn in Pisces. So where people are acting out, they're being, combative, they're argumentative, they're getting mad, they're getting angry, and that's coming from suppressed stuff, or that's coming from, mental health issues or disorders. But I think also hidden illnesses, because Mars is conjunct Saturn and it's invisible. So we'll see problems with hospitals and also encampments, and I think a multitude of mental health issues as well, and people acting out as a result of that being undiagnosed. But with Mars, Saturn, I said, we see issues with water. So I do think that we may see further potential water attacks, problems with ships, and also flooding or issues with dams. I'm especially watching through the second half of April, as Mars will be in between Saturn and Neptune, and there can definitely be some fishy things going on. But with Mars conjunct Neptune, many of us are going to feel defeated, tired, exhausted, and like I said, willing to throw in the towel. So it's important to be asking yourself, is it laziness or is it procrastination that's stemming from fear? Now, it's possible with Mars-Saturn conjunctions that a little bit of prayer, some meditation, and also the ability to visualize the end goal is what keeps us going. We have to be putting one foot in front of the other and being willing to just start and take a simple step every day to be able to grow into this new version of ourselves. Mars conjunct Saturn may also bring some significant mechanical breakdowns. Anytime we see any aspect between Mars and Saturn, whether it's a conjunction or a square, generally something like this happens. So I do feel like people can be kind of haywire during the Mercury retrograde and the solar eclipse, because we do find out that there is some kind of breakdown. So I don't know if this is going to be coming from some kind of system, or if this is going to be some kind of issue going on with hospitals. And I'm also really anticipating that there's going to be issues with planes. I've said this before in my Mercury retrograde video, but because Mercury is turning retrograde in the 3rd decan, which deals with Jupiter, which is Sagittarius, kind of degrees, issues with foreign travel, issues with limitation from travel, and I will definitely continue to be on the up and up, watching for potential, travel announcements about where we should and should not be going. If there is any reason to believe that there could be any potential terrorist attacks. Unfortunately, when we see some of these aspects, this does happen. Something else that's concerning for me is attacks on places of worship, because Pisces does deal with churches, temples, spiritual centers, and Mars-Saturn conjunctions can be an indication of that. Not to parrot the news, but this has been going around recently on mainstream media, where they are talking about that there has been some alerts about some potential need to, be aware of what's going on during worship around Easter time here in the United States. But I say this because of the Mars-Saturn conjunction personally. I feel like there could literally be attacks within some of these spaces. And I just want everybody to, be aware of your surroundings when you're going out and you're doing things. Obviously, it's terrible that we live in a day and age where, we're afraid to go and worship in public spaces with other people. It's really disheartening, especially because I feel like faith and a connection to a higher source is so incredibly important at these times. The last time that we saw, a similar eclipse to this, I was looking back at 2015. We saw somewhere around early April, we had a solar eclipse that was in Aries with the North Node. We did not have Chiron there. But the last time this happened in 2005, that's when the last Pope died. So it's possible with Saturn and Mars coming into conjunction, an older leader within a spiritual or organized religion may step down or might pass away. So it's possible we can see that, especially because solar eclipses are generally considered bad omens for leaders or kings. I've recently seen, I think it's Sadhguru, he's been having some really significant or serious health issues. So this can also be connected to this incoming eclipse. But it can also be that we're ushering in somebody new, some new hero, or somebody who's coming in that can kind of help guide people or protect people in a leadership role may emerge. So we might actually see some new storylines about people who are coming in to kind of help protect the masses and stand up and be a leader. If you haven't heard about the Alarak retiree recall, it's definitely something I would look into. I've heard different opinions of what the dates are. Some people have said 4 years, some people have said 5, some people have said 8. But this is basically something that they're putting forth, which is going to be calling in retired veterans who have already served in the United States military to potentially come back in. Now, it may not seem like a big deal to you, but it's kind of unfair for some people who have already been discharged to have to be brought back into the service. But they're being told that failure to do so is being considered a deserter, and benefits can be interfered with, which essentially means that their veterans benefits or any kind of payments that they're getting can be affected. Now, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it generally can be spelling out potentially, once they have gone through and brought back their veterans into the service and placed them in the positions that they need them, that step 2 would potentially be a draft. I think about Aries and how Aries deals with young men. Mercury retrograde, we're going to have a lot of people talking about whether or not we feel comfortable sending our sons and daughters off to service. And if we are sending them into situations that's just perpetuating never-ending wars. So I anticipate this is going to be a hot topic over the next couple of months with this particular eclipse. All right, so let's get into the transits that catch my eye. I know some of you guys are watching this on the 31st, so happy Sunday to my Sunday crew. I've got you guys, we'll look at the first week, and then I'm going to talk about the transits that I think are the most prominent throughout this month. But before I get there, just a reminder, so we do have several ingresses going on this month when planets will change signs. April 4th, we're going to see Venus enter into the feisty fire sign of Aries. Okay, so if you happen to be a Taurus, Libra, or Aries rising, this is going to impact you the most, although I think Aries placements are going to love a little bit of love. Then on the 19th, we're going to see the Sun enter into Taurus. So it's going to be moving into the fixed Earth sign. So for those of you guys who are April Aries, happy birthday. Those of you guys who are April Tauruses, happy birthday. But that Sun ingress into Taurus should bring us a little bit more stability. And we're also seeing quite a grand buildup to just a ton of planets conjuncting Jupiter and Uranus as we get closer to the month of May. On the 29th, Venus will enter Taurus, so she's moving into her home sign in her domicile. So this will be good news for all of you guys who are ruled by Venus, so my Taurus, my Libra risings, as Venus comes home. And then on the 30th of the month, we will see Mars enter into its home sign of Aries. So it is going to be reborn. We are going to see this like kicking the door in energy, and we're finally going to start to kind of seeing some action post Mercury retrograde and post solar eclipse. Now on retrogrades, remember on the 1st of April, Mercury will turn retrograde, okay? We'll see the direct at a later date this month, but we'll be feeling the effects of it all the way through the month of May. And for lunations this month, on April 8th, we'll see a new moon solar eclipse in the sign of Aries. This will be at 19 degrees. So if you have anything from about 17 to 21 degrees of Aries, you'll be feeling this the strongest. As well as if you have any personal planets there, and for my cardinal signs, so if you have any placements in Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn between these degrees, you're going to feel the effects of the eclipse, and it's going to kind of squeeze your personal placements or your angles, and it might be a little bit more active for you. And then on the 23rd of the month, we're going to see a full moon in Scorpio at 4 degrees, and this is gnarly, guys. I'll show it to you when we get there, but it's going to create a Pluto T-square. So the sun and the moon are going to square Pluto. So it's a very Plutonian full moon. How appropriate with Scorpio energies. And we're going to see Mars as the co-ruler trapped between Saturn and Neptune. Kind of like a shift hitting the fan moment. And I could see a lot of people really feeling it when it comes to paying their taxes, because Scorpio deals with taxes. So the square to Pluto is definitely going to be, I think, quite the revolution when it comes to whether or not people are going to continue paying them. All right, so let's start at the beginning of the month. Happy almost April. Some of you guys are watching this on the 31st. When you wake up in the morning, we're going to see this moon in Sagittarius, and it is trining Mercury. What a wonderful day if you wanted to get everything prepared for the Mercury retrograde, because Mercury is going to begin stationing. It's going to go retrograde. So this is a good time to get things in order. And when we look at the moon in Sagittarius, we're always looking at what's happening with Jupiter, and Jupiter is snuggling up next to Uranus. This is kind of feeling those growing energies when it comes to, financial changes, personal changes, home changes, anything in regards to our resources, our pleasure, our self-esteem. And obviously the moon is going to quincunx this early in the morning. We will also see the moon start coming into a square with Venus and Neptune. So there can be some question marks about how to better relate to people, what we're doing when it comes to our romantic life, what we're doing when it comes to our resources. So definitely be mindful that people can be feeling a little bit more withdrawn with the Venus-Neptune conjunction that's building. So you want to lean more into the Sag moon, trying all of these placements in Aries. Stay educated, do something that's fun and adventurous, be out there, be loud, be doing some exploring, something that's going to be able to be like, okay, I'm not going to kind of get feeling like watered down by the Venus Neptune stuff. I'm going out there and doing things more independently. So this fire energy needs a bit of an outlet. We're not going to see much else happening this day. We'll continue to see the moon go through Sagittarius, and then it's going to enter into Capricorn late Sunday evening. So you guys won't really feel it. Most of you guys will be asleep. But then when we wake up on the 1st, things get a little wonky. So in the morning, that moon in Capricorn is going to start coming into a square, both with the sun and also the node throughout the day. So this is a day where things feel, moon in Capricorn, we're having to do emotional running around and doing all of like the emotional legwork. Capricorn is a sign that deals more with government and responsibility and career. So we're really feeling the effects now of Mars getting really close to Saturn. Thankfully, the moon will sextile, so I do feel like we have an outlet, and the outlet is basically like sitting and having a plan, visualizing what we need to get done, and also recognizing that part of being a good leader or a good boss or a professional is delegating tasks and knowing when to be like, this is not my lane, or I don't have time for this, or this is too much, which seems kind of challenging with all of this like cardinal energy in the skies, because when we have a lot of like Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn going on, generally we're pretty busy. So when that moon starts coming into a square, which won't happen until later in the day when Mercury goes retrograde. So Mercury won't go retrograde this day. We're going to start seeing that moon square the north and the south node late at night, and also the sun. So things kind of get a little wonky Monday night. We might feel like things aren't going according to plan. Moon going through Capricorn can quite literally be about our responsibility or our goals. And then like Mercury turns retrograde and we're like, okay, what is my responsibility? What am I supposed to be doing? I could see a lot of people kind of reassessing things and asking themselves if what their emotions are telling them is that it's time to kind of step up and make a change. Now, also, Mercury is retrograde, so it'll go retrograde at 27 degrees. It'll go retrograde all the way to 15 degrees. So pretty much anything within like the second and third decan of Aries is going to get hit with this Mercury retrograde. If you have personal planets there, it's a moment of assessment. Go watch my Mercury retrograde video. I kind of touch on this pretty specifically. And then this is taking us into the 2nd. And when we wake up in the morning on the 2nd, things are definitely still kind of hairy because the moon is still squaring the north and south node. So when the moon squares its own nodes, it means there's something happening that is fated. And so I'm looking at Mars conjunct Saturn, which is like, oh, this is breaking down, or this is dissolving, or I have to end this, or I have to believe, right? Jupiter is associated traditionally with Pisces. I have to believe this is possible. I have to be strong. Mars can actually, really benefit from Saturn in some situations. And, Saturn can say, hold on, be patient, really think about it, take your time, have an action plan, don't just rush through things. So it's a time where we're getting really serious about our goals, especially because Mars is the ruler of the North Node. So we're going to continue to see that square play out where the moon will then square Chiron. So we may be feeling effects of like within our bodies where we're kind of feeling drained or burnt out because we're doing too much. So be mindful of that. And there can be some issues in communicating with like superiors, and issues with bosses or parents can sometimes come up with squares between Aries and Capricorn. All right, so we're going to keep going now. Something else that I wanted to look at. So let's see, I got to take you guys through the 7th, right? So then we're going to go and catch the square to Mercury, which is going to happen on the 2nd. Later in the day. So I don't recommend trying to do anything on the 2nd that's too much communication related, because the moon is about how we emotionally feel. And when it's in Capricorn, we're feeling very rigid. And it's squaring Mercury in Aries, which is retrograde. So it's interesting that Saturn is connected to Capricorn, Mars is connected to Aries, and like Saturn and Mars are getting really close together. So we're like, what is this thing that's holding me back? Or why can't I proceed forward? Or, like we're already kind of feeling it. And it's even being shown within that conjunction, that square between the moon and Mercury. But difficult time emotionally relating, feeling like we're having a hard time meeting deadlines. That's something else that can kind of come up with the Mercury retrograde. So watch for that. And we're going to see then the next day, so this will be early on the 3rd of April. Then Venus comes into conjunction with Neptune, okay? And the moon conjuncts Pluto. Holy cow. So moon conjunct Pluto in Aquarius. There is some kind of emotional purging, right? In general astrology, the moon's going to represent everybody's kind of mood within the collective. So moon conjunct Pluto can definitely bring a profound shift emotionally and some kind of purge. This is ruled by both Saturn, right, which is coming into conjunction with Mars, and Uranus, which is coming into conjunction with Jupiter. So collectively, we can all be like, what is going on? Something is breaking down. Moon Pluto can definitely be about, especially in Aquarius, like conspiracy things or people feeling paranoid or like worried about stuff and kind of like freaking out about things. So be mindful of that really intense emotional stuff that's going on early in the morning. And then we're going to see the moon pass Pluto and it'll calm down a little bit, but we still have Venus and Neptune coming into conjunction. And what's interesting is they'll conjunct at 27, which is a degree that deals with Gemini. So we're going to see issues with, people kind of double dipping in relationships. We're going to see issues with people and whether or not they're actually showing up and, really backing up their words and what they're telling people they're going to do or how they're committing to relationships. Venus is exalted in Pisces, so it's a beautiful placement, but the conjunction to Neptune, especially moving from 27 to 28, which is a Cancer degree, there can be like a sadness to this. There can be a sense of grieving or letting go or disappointment. For spiritual people, for creators and designers and people who are really into the arts, you may be feeling like this is like a dreamy day where you're inspired, you want to create something, you want to paint, you want to dance, you want to play. Not the best day for making investments, not the best day for making major commitments, because when Venus is conjunct Neptune, especially when Saturn and Mars are nearby, there can be a sense of being like, this is hard, I have to give up too much, I have to sacrifice. And generally when I see Venus-Neptune aspects, there can be a sense of over-idealizing someone or something and something looking too good to be true. And then you find out it's a scam, or then you find out you've been catfished. So just be mindful about that kind of in the background with that particular conjunction. So then the moon's going to keep moving through Aquarius. Okay, so we're in the morning. And what else is going on here? We're not going to see any squares or anything yet to Taurus. And it looks like in the PM hours, we'll see a sextile between the moon and the sun. And then that's taking us to the 4th. So on the 4th, this is an interesting day. This is the day you guys are going to want to watch, especially early in the morning. The moon hits 15 degrees, the sun hits 15 degrees, and it conjuncts the north node. So the moon will sextile the sun conjunct the north node. Now, it may not look like a big deal, but I think it is because the sun's exalted in Aries, and the conjunction to the north node at 15 degrees might be a moment of like personal realization or awareness. Only a few days after the Mercury retrograde, but the sun is highlighting where we need to grow, right? Where we need to be brave, be daring, be creative, be our most authentic selves. Now, all this Aries stuff is ruled by Mars, and Mars being in Pisces behind the sun is invisible, and it might kind of feel like we have to be willing to face our fears. We have to be willing to cut certain things out of our life, relationships, habits, patterns, people, in order to become the person that we're becoming. So it's kind of weird that we have like, all this energy in Aries, but there's this stellium in Pisces that's like, but I'm afraid, but am I ever going to find somebody else? Like, is it going to work out? Like there can be some fear, some doubt that can kind of come up with Mars and Saturn. But I do feel like that the moon sextiling the sun as we're coming into the last real positive aspect, I think, before the solar eclipse on the 8th, is like, okay, moon in Aquarius, what is your goal? Who is your tribe? Where are your friends? Where are your people? Who can you connect with? The moon will also square Jupiter, so we're feeling very emotionally sensitive. We're really feeding off of like what other people are saying or what people are discussing or kind of talking about. What is the Sabian symbol for 16 degrees of Aries? Let's look at that. So it is at 15, but I'm going to read you guys 16 because we round up. And I haven't looked at this, so we're going to do this together. All right, so here we go. So 16 degrees of Aries. Brownies dancing in the setting sun, okay? The theme is the dance of life. The symbol speaks to getting back to the raw, unrefined, and natural source of things for clarification, understanding, and self-renewal. The image of brownies dancing in the setting sun depicts nature spirits revealing just before the day turns to light, when symbolically the source of their life goes home and returns to its source. In a very real sense, the image depicts the celebration of life or the end of a cycle and honoring of whatever cycle is signified. But it also depicts an eagerness to move into the next cycle, and it alludes to transitions or to a point where old gives way to new, and the end is the beginning. The end and the beginning are one. Here, in the implication of naive optimism and a willingness to face the unknown. The symbol also implies rejuvenation and a willingness to face the unknown. The symbol implicates rejuvenation in the form of getting back to nature and physical source of life. It illustrates not only a friendly relationship between man and his universe, but the indestructible link or bond between any source and its progeny. On a practical level, the symbol can apply to an Irish wake, a bachelor party, a graduation dance, a retirement dinner, and all of the rituals and celebrations of life, most significant transitions. At its highest, it represents a rich and rewarding life as a result of appreciating and accepting new opportunities for growth. Watch for the inability to recognize when change or improvement is needed, or naive fatalism. The accent is on celebration, endings and beginnings, the natural cycle of life. You could find yourself laughing or crying at the same time. A wistful sense of nostalgia, having to close the door on past mingles with excitement of opening a wide gateway to a new cycle of activity. Here is the bittersweet blending of regret and eagerness. Time stands still in this moment of celebration where meets tomorrow, and the past and the future are one. The advantage lies in recognizing when a cycle has ended and being able to release, let go, and move on. Getting back to nature can help clear the mind. In a matter of health, natural remedies are favored. Guard against crystallizing yourself by refusing to accept change. Try not to cling to the past or hang on to what has long since served its time. Well, how appropriate is that when we have Mars in the last sign of the zodiac, which is completing a cycle, right? It's cycling something out spiritually, emotionally, subconsciously. And then at the same time, it's conjuncting Saturn, which is saying this is the end of this situation. You know, it's time to move into this new thing. And so endings and beginnings being one. Recently, I just watched the movie on Netflix, Spaceman, which did not expect this movie to be what it was. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's got Adam Sandler in it. I was just kind of flipping through and I was like, this is weird. I want to watch this. And then it ended up being a totally different movie than I thought it was. If you haven't seen it, I won't give you the spoilers, but I definitely recommend watching it because it reminds me of the Sabian Symbol. Basically, Adam Sandler goes up into space. He's got a 1-year kind of term he has to do up there where he's separate from his partner. He has all of these realizations while he's up there, and he's kind of going through this situation where he's separate from his wife who's pregnant and is having a baby. And he comes into contact with a being, I'll just say that helps him come to a lot of realizations about his life and where he's been kind of holding himself back from like really moving forward. And then takes him on like this like exploration of the cosmos, and he has like this really otherworldly experience, and it was like so beautiful to see it explained, I think, in a movie where it talks about like the center of the universe, where all source comes from, where all souls come from, where we kind of consider home, that it's both where our birth takes place and also our death, but we all kind of connect in this space. It really reminds me of this. And I think that, yeah, I mean, obviously Pisces is film, right? It's movies. So maybe there's a message within that might be like helpful and better, kind of encompassing the Sabian symbol. So if you've seen it, leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think about it. Were you equally kind of surprised on like how the story went? Because when it was over, my husband was like, that was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And I was like, it makes perfect sense. And I was trying to explain it to him, but he's like, okay. But it really resonates, I think, with some of the transits. You know, so much about the sun, right, in astrology is about our connection to creator. And Aries is the self. So this is why I think the sun is exalted in Aries, where we realize that Man and God can be connected in one, right? I'll read you guys this again. Remember what I said earlier in my discussion. There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars, in the earth to stress nations in its perplexity because of the roaring of the sea and waves, Mars and Saturn in Pisces, by the way. People fainting with fear, foreboding of what's coming in this world, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken, and they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Well, this is what's happening right now, right? There's a lot of people realizing, like, I have that connection to a higher source. We can't let billionaires block out the sun. We can't get freaked out about what's being sprayed in the skies. There's obviously some move or motive to try to shut that energy down to disrupt our connection with the elements. But it can't stop you from going outside, laying in the sun for a little bit in the morning, or, you know, having your lunch break, you know, maybe in a park, or walking your dog, or that connection that you have with those elements. And so I think a lot of like this retrograde and the conjunction to the sun is this awakening and realizing, like, this is my journey. This is my purpose, right? Aries doesn't ask, it just does. It's like the sun, it just comes up. So maybe this is where you start kind of seeing, like, okay, there is this next leg of the journey that's coming, and I have to be willing to embrace it. This is this amazing new beginning. And with that beginning, it means I got to make space, right? I'll give you guys this example as a woman. I'm sure we've all been there, where we're kind of rearranging our closet, rearranging our shoe rack and other things. And we're like, where are we going to put new stuff? We want the new stuff, so we got to get rid of the old stuff. So there's a lot of getting rid of old stuff to make space for what's new. And so it can be scary getting out of our comfort zone. You know, Venus is going to hit 29 degrees this day. So we're definitely going to feel that kind of critical turning point where something is shifting. But I think beyond that, it can be some really exciting things that can be coming from this period. All right, so the sun conjuncts the north node. The moon's going to keep moving through Aquarius. In the middle of the night, it's going to pick up a square to Jupiter and Uranus. And then that's leading us into, midday. It's going to square Jupiter and Uranus. Then we're going to see the moon come into a sextile with Mercury in the PM hours of the 4th. Not much else is going on there. And then on the 5th, when we wake up, the moon is in Pisces. Venus is in Aries. Okay. Moon here. So we're looking at Jupiter. We're looking at Neptune. And Venus has entered into Aries. Interesting. So definitely different feeling, different vibe for, style, beauty, relationships. Venus is kind of coming out of the sea, and now she's putting on her armor. So those of you guys who are Taurus and, like I said, Libra risings, you're going to feel this shift pretty dramatically. Venus is not comfortable in Aries because she's moving through a Mars sign. However, if you have like a Aries sun, moon, rising, you may enjoy this transit because it's bringing you kind of the blessings of Venus. And Venus, after all, is going to come into contact with the North Node, right? So that's going to be about loving ourselves and loving ourselves some more. Noticing that as the moon moves into Pisces, we're also looking at Jupiter. And so Jupiter is like super nuzzled up to Uranus. We're starting to feel that kind of growing, not like tension, but excitement, right? Anticipation. I think of like, Uranus as being like a surprise party, and Jupiter is like this big boom. So there's some big grand surprise that's going on that we're all going to become aware of here later in the month. And the moon is going to come into contact with Mars. So we'll see that in the later hours of the 5th. It can be interesting because, while the moon's going through Pisces, we're going into the dark moon. So the moon's going to hit a lot of planets actually before it comes into the conjunction with the solar eclipse. So the one thing I can tell you is that, both with Venus being in Aries, the sextile to Pluto, we're feeling that there's something new coming, there's some transformation coming. And this moon's got to go through here between, late on the 5th and at some point on the 8th before we have the solar eclipse. Wonderful time, 6th, 7th, 8th for purging, clearing, purification, getting stuff out, because look at all the stuff the moon's going to have to hit here. Okay, this is now leading us into the 6th. So that'll be Saturday. So the moon's going to hit Mars, and that'll be early morning on the 6th. Then it's going to hit Saturn. So that's going to be early morning on the 6th. And that can represent a hardening, basically, of emotions, or feeling like We're kind of trapped. Be very careful with these Moon, Mars, Saturn, Neptune energies. If you're on water, if you're boating, watch for issues with storms. That can be something else that can kind of come up here. And the Moon, when it was conjunct Mars, felt intensity and emotion and passion. Moon conjunct Saturn is feeling restricted, and it's like, no, I don't want to act out. You know, Pisces wants peace. And then the Moon's going to hang out between Saturn and Neptune. Good time on the 6th for like cleansing, detoxing, purging, purification, baths, rituals as we're coming into the new moon. Usually when we're in the dark moon phase, the day before or so the eclipse, that's when we're clearing everything out. And then we're going to see the moon keep moving through Pisces. What else is going on here? And then on the 6th, it's going to, in the evening hours, start coming into conjunction with Neptune. Watch those dreams on the 6th. There can be some really interesting stuff. Really great time for meditation, past life regression, doing some kind of dream work, some shamanic work, shamanic dance, especially with Mars being in Pisces. I could see a lot of people gearing up, especially people like who are in the spiritual community who are like, I'm getting ready for this eclipse. I'm cleaning everything. I'm, getting everything vibrationally sound, and kind of protecting space. So if you're one of those people who wants to do this on the 6th. The 6th and the 7th is the best time to do it. But the moon's besieged between Saturn and Neptune. So you're doing this in private. You're doing this kind of on your own time. And then we come to the 7th, which should be Sunday of next week. That moon is going to ingress into Aries early in the morning. So when you wake up on Sunday, the moon is in Aries, and it will first make contact with Venus. Okay, so maybe there is some sense of, focusing on our own self-love, our own goals, our own relationships, ourselves, right? Aries is inherently selfish for a reason. And then the moon is going to pass Venus, and it's going to head towards the North Node right around the time, so this is the PM hours. It conjuncts the North Node will be the evening of the 7th, okay? And this is taking us into the 8th, when we are going to have the solar eclipse new moon. Now, on the 8th in the morning, the moon's going to touch the North Node. I recommend paying attention to what's going on. What happened on the 7th where you realize what you really love and what you really want, right? What was going on in your mind? What were you thinking about? And then the moon hits the North Node at a 15 degrees. So we're communicating. There's this ending. There's this new beginning. And then we're going to see the sun conjunct Chiron with this eclipse to the minute, okay, of the eclipse. Chiron's on the sun. Wowzers. This is not the only time that we're going to see this unfold, though. Like, the solar eclipse happens, but Mercury's going to retrograde over this. Mars will eventually hit it. Mars will square it. We're going to see plenty of activations of this eclipse. Go watch the eclipse video. And so, like I said, in the background, this Mars-Saturn conjunction is happening leading up to the eclipse. It's within 1 degree. And the conjunction will be at 14 degrees, which is a Taurus degree, which is about food, money, stability, security, ruled by Jupiter, okay? And Jupiter's down here conjunct Uranus. I'm hearing all these things on social media that's like, make sure you have food, make sure you have supplies, have enough this for that for a week. And then we're hearing stuff like CERN is turning back on, and like NASA wants to shoot stuff into like the skies on the eclipse. Like, the reality of the situation is most of us should have a case of water and some extra stuff in the house, just in the off chance that there is some weird stuff that happens. Don't get spooked and freaked out about what's going on. Focus more on, do I have what I need? Do I feel safe and secure? If I'm going out, do I know I'm going to be in a safe space? Do what you want to do. But I will say that an eclipse, generally, there are events that happen with eclipses that we can't see. So when we put it all together, this reason for them saying, well, there's going to be, issues with cell phones. There's going to be problems with that. I mean, Mercury will be retrograde, right? We could see that. Mars will be conjunct Saturn, which means there can be issues with gasoline or, some kind of system breakdown connected to, the sextile to Jupiter and Uranus. Will there be price gouging for things? Of course. So knowing that these things are going to happen, why not have it on hand prior to that, just to be safe and secure? That's my thought process. But I do think that even the hours after this eclipse, you see the moon is still going to have to come in conjunction with Mercury, right? So here we are, the PM hours of the 8th. The eclipse is only going to take place. It'll span over several hours, depending on where you are, but you'll only see it for like 3-4 minutes. But the evening for me, when the moon comes into conjunction with Mercury, which can represent everybody's going, why isn't this working? Or why did this short circuit? Or why isn't my internet turning on? Well, this is all ruled by Mars, conjunct Saturn. So yeah, I could see something happening here. Sure, of course, yeah, that is possible. But it could also be because Jupiter's conjunct Uranus, you know, so we could see some major fluctuations going on with the planet, going on with the Earth. This is like earthquake stuff. Jupiter-Uranus is earthquake stuff. All right, so then the moon is going to leave that conjunction. And then the next day on the 9th, is it on the 9th? Maybe it's going to be on the 10th. I take that back. On the 10th, we will see Mars conjunct Saturn. So it looks like that's going to happen right here. So this will be the 10th, okay? So Mars conjunct Saturn. Also, something else I would say is like having some cash on hand, because this is a degree that deals with money. And when Mars and Jupiter align, when Mars and Saturn align, which could be some limitation of having something, right? And everybody going, where is this? I need this, I need that. The moon will conjunct Jupiter and Uranus, so it's going to further kind of inflame this Mars-Saturn stuff on the 10th. Okay, so I don't know. I've heard some crazy stuff. People are like, it's the 3 days of darkness, and I'm like, then have a flashlight. You know, I don't know. Maybe I'm too optimistic. You guys let me know what you think. But definitely the 10th. The 10th for me is it. All right, so then this is now going to take us to the 11th. If you're still with me. And I talked about the Mars-Saturn stuff, limitations, breakdowns. I'm going to do another video on it for you guys specifically on that. But on the 11th is when we're going to see the Cazimi. All right. So this is when Mercury is conjunct the Sun in superior position. Mercury's in his chariot. He's riding to the king. He's like, I have this message for you. And still in the background, ruled by Mars, and Mars is now between Saturn and Neptune. So this is some funky territory. Until Mars really gets into Aries, which won't be until the end of the month, I consider Mars to be in very fishy circumstances where he's wanting to react or wanting to intervene or wanting to do something, and Saturn says no, and Neptune throws a net over him and he's stuck. He cannot intervene. So what does it mean? Who's having a difficult time intervening, right? Is it spiritual community, religious community? Are we going to see more of these religious conflicts and war type scenarios or attacks? Are we going to see more issues revolving around, you know, hospital, challenges? Maybe. I think that the Cazimi in itself at 22 degrees of Aries does represent that there is some message that's needing to be relayed that is somehow connected to military, government, you know, generals, things like that, because it's a Capricorn degree. So we may hear, it's like, okay, well, this is being mobilized and we're sending people here and this is what we're doing. But I would be really suspicious. I'd be really careful with this because I feel like nobody's going to know what they're doing. Even if there was no solar eclipse, even if that stuff wasn't going on, just looking at this conjunction, even though it's positive, I don't really think anybody really knows what they're doing. So it's really important to pay attention to the messages, and Pisces teaches us to listen to our gut feelings and intuition. If you're like, I don't feel like I should be going there. I don't really feel like this is going to be best for me. I want to take a different way home. You know, I think it's safe for me to stay home tonight. I'm not going out. Now, on the flip side, this is the halfway point through the Mercury retrograde. So this is, if you don't know what it's about, now you know. And likely you're going to have some sense of realization or awareness about what's been holding you back, what you've been afraid of, where you've been limiting yourself, where it's time to move forward. And as Mercury is continuing its retrograde, it'll conjunct Chiron at 19, reactivating the eclipse and bringing up, hey, we need to heal this situation. This is a problem. So you will see that happening. Let's see. So we have the 11th. We will see that happening here. On April 15th, okay, Mercury retrograde, conjunct Chiron, reactivating the eclipse. What happened during the eclipse? What wasn't working? What sudden information came up? What realizations came up? What do you need to heal? How can we learn to talk about where we have hurt other people, who's hurt us, how we can better express ourselves and communicate that? And then we're going to see on the 19th, Mercury will retrograde in conjunction to Venus, 17 degrees. So Venus is the ruler of the South Node, which is about relationship karma, okay? And it's been conjunct the North Node for about 2 days. I guess I should have mentioned that. So right here, Venus conjunct the North Node on the 17th. It's about, learning to kind of come into relationships of destiny, opening ourselves up to more self-love, more self-awareness, the willingness to be authentic and not be afraid to be ourselves. And then we're going to see Mercury retrograde. So Mercury's turning back. It's like the phone that's calling, and it's your ex, Venus. So the past can be calling in some way, or you can be recalling the past, or recalling some kind of past hurt, or trying to move through it in some way. But once again, Mars is the dispositor. I think a lot of people are working stuff out in their dreams. I mean, I know I've heard this for some, weeks, but I really think this is going to be happening now. It's like people who haven't gotten closure or didn't get over things or whatever. It's kind of playing out in a subconscious way. So it can be happening for you in a dream state or in a meditative state as well. But this would be the day that exes would be calling. I would say be cautious with Venus in its fall. Whenever Venus and Mercury come into conjunction, it's like the head and the heart aren't in alignment. Right? Especially with Mercury, the moon being in a Mercury sign that day. It's in Virgo. So it's basically saying like, yeah, I don't know if I resonate with this. Like, let's not respond to that text too quickly, In the background, we also see that Mars is now coming into a sextile with Jupiter and Uranus. The conjunction will technically be on the 20th, but by the time you get to mid-month, you're already feeling it. But it's interesting that Mars is sextiling because it's basically saying because of some action behind the scenes or some unexpected force or energy or some kind of push, there is some dramatic shift going on within the banking, finances, or resources. And 21 is where things grow up. So we see increased costs and price. Hi, you guys see how much cocoa is right now? It's 150%. More than what it usually costs. So growth of things that are sweet can be Taurus. I have a hunch it could also be copper. I think we might see a sudden increase in copper prices for some reason because of its connection to Venus and Taurus. So that's possible. I wonder if there is some squabbles going on, some conflict or potential war energies over resources, over minerals and things that are going to be very valuable as well. All right, so that's going to be the 19th. And then obviously when Mars sextiles Jupiter and Uranus, some things are kind of stirring and we can't really see where it's coming from. I think a lot of people are going to be like, what's going on with the energies right now? And then we will see on the 20th, let's go back. This is when the conjunction happens, right? Bridge over troubled water. You guys have heard me talk about this, Jupiter and Uranus. For the most part though, I mean, I think that even this doesn't mean something's going to happen that day. I really have to preface this. Although Venus ruling Taurus and with Venus, on the eclipse point of 19 degrees and Jupiter and Uranus conjuncting, sextiling Mars, I think there's going to be some really interesting things happening with finances. I really think a lot of it's going to be connected to, digital currencies, cryptocurrencies. I think a lot of people are going to be hearing about the future and their communication. So much of the Mercury retrograde is what can I say or not say, or where am I censoring myself? And starting to see the connections between communication and online and how it may potentially have a tie-in to CBDCs, digital credit score, things like that. Obviously in Australia, we're hearing that they're pushing forward with the digital ID and how that might be tied to banking. I think we're going to be hearing more about this, especially if you guys have heard about like the SWIFT network. They're talking about in the next 12 to 24 months implementing a direct connection to CBDC currencies. Taurus is money, Jupiter is global, it's growth, Uranus is, sudden change, so obviously we know that this is going to be a theme really for the next year or so. But this is where you start to see the real rumbles that are going on in the financial world that I think are going to come, to a real roar in mid-August of 2024. There's just so many connections, like Mars connects to Venus and Venus connects to Jupiter, that it's very obvious that a lot of people are going to look around, they're going to be like, what's going on with my money? Like, what's going on with inflation? Like, you know, more people that are starting to speak up about the cost of things and like their inability to afford stuff, and a complete mind shift about relationships that they have with physical, tangible currency, and also who they're banking with. So then on the heels of this, right, then we're going to have the next day where the sun squares Pluto. And by the way, when planets hit 2 degrees, they are very, very strong because it's a Taurus degree. I think Nicola talks about this. Hold on here. What did he have to say about this? I feel like he had something. Nicola says, my research on the zodiac degrees has shown that the 2nd degree of any zodiac sign appears in the astrological charts of people who achieve supreme power or greatness or recognition and respect in their lifetime. Then he gives a bunch of explanations. But I know because it's a Taurus degree, this is when things get, they get very powerful. It's kind of like, you know, Taurus is a boulder, so it puts something down. So let's see. So what is Aquarius 2? Which is technically Aquarius 3, but it's 2 degrees. Oh, you guys are going to love this. You ready? Aquarius 3, a deserter from the Navy. What are 2 things that we just talked about earlier in this video? The Navy and how people are going to be considered deserters. Here's the theme. And endings are beginnings. Okay, this is the 2nd time that we've heard this. The symbol speaks to a rebellion or refusal to cooperate with any further in some situation or relationships, regardless of the consequences. The image of a deserter in the Navy is one of the negative or reverse symbols, and it alerts to the repudiation of a commitment or desire to break free from a relationship or perceived bondage. The emphasis in the symbol is on responsibility, faithfulness, and the need to make the best of situations or capitalize the challenges they present. On a practical level, the symbol can indicate escape, running away from problems. The lesson here is that the way a relationship is ended can create more problems than it solves. At its highest, it represents refusal to make promises and commitments against better judgment and the courage to end all unprofitable relationships responsibly with dignity. The accent is on rebellion. Expect resistance to rules and regulations. People are inclined to want to do their own thing. Job walkouts and resignations are possible. Your greatest advantage lies in reevaluating commitments that have proven to be detrimental to your physical or psychological well-being. Find responsible ways to end destructive relationships with full cooperation. I think with the Mercury retrograde and Venus being in the 1st house, it's people being like, I'm not contributing to this. I know it sounds weird, but I really feel like a lot of it's going to be about whether or not people are paying taxes. Because Pluto represents taxes, and this is this collective movement, and the sun in Taurus is what I have, and you've seen this all over, you know, social media. I'm not telling you to pay your taxes or not pay your taxes. I'm not a tax advisor. I can't give you financial advice. I'm just saying that this is what it's reflecting to me. And people saying that they do not want to continue to fund war, or people saying, I will not buy in this, you know, with this, from this store. I will not support this brand. We're going to see some movement or something like this that's going to be connected to that. So sun square Pluto. What's the sun at 3 of Taurus? Step-ups to a lawn blooming with clovers. Hopefulness. The higher path. The symbol speaks to a man's growing realization of divinity and beauty that surrounds him, and the fact that nothing can stop an individual from pursuing his goals or his dreams when he believes they can be realized. The image of steps up on a lawn blooming with clovers alludes to a desirable goal with easy reach. Clovers symbolize prosperity, enjoyment, freedom from care. The 3-leaf structure represents the Holy Trinity. The stairs leading up to the upward symbolize ambition, optimism, and inspiration. The way and means to reach each goal present in the image, but the suggestion here is that the individual must take the initiative, set his foot on the path, and put forth the effort required to reach it. At its highest, it represents vision, optimism, determination to keep going. Goals seem to be within reach. Well, Sun square Pluto does bring power struggles, you know, and the sun basically is like, this is what I want to do. And the sun in Taurus says, I want pleasure, right? I want abundance. I want life. I want growth. And the sun is ruled by Venus, and Venus is conjunct Chiron, saying, but I'm scared, you know, but what am I going to lose? But what am I giving up? I'm afraid. And it's like, That in itself can represent a power struggle, right? Within yourself of, am I going to let this grow? And in order to let something grow, my goals have to change. Something may have to transform. It has to die off. And it's going to be about people saying, I'm not going with this particular agenda, right? I'm not going to follow the herd mentality of Aquarius. This is like, no, I want life. I want abundance. I want beauty. I want connection to real things. Taurus can be about what's organic, about what's natural, what the human, body is supposed to do. A lot of this can be about, procreation. It can be about sensuality, and challenging some of the status quos or social norms where people will push back against that. Interesting times. All right, so then we're going to see on the 25th, thank Goddess, Mercury goes direct. So basically the 1st through the 25th, we're in this retrograde. Mercury will go direct at 15 degrees, which basically means this is the degree that it came into shadow that we saw at the end of April. I want you guys, the end of March. Mercury conjunct the North Node, calls of destiny. What am I supposed to do? This is what I've made up my mind. By the end of April, we should know, where our goals are, what our values are. We should be feeling stronger, more self-aware, more capable, more clear. That's how we want to use all this Aries energy. If we're doing that by the time the Mercury retrograde's over and we're coming out of these heavy energies, guys, May is such an abundant month. There's so much goodness to receive when we have all these planets conjunct Jupiter. We have Mars and Aries. It's going to be like, okay, we're doing this thing now that we've kind of gone through the tornado of April. So even though Mercury's direct and it's conjunct the North Node, this is going to be a retrograde that's going to kick on the back end because it's got to go past Chiron, reactivate with the eclipse degree, and then it's got to get out of about 26, 27 degrees. So it's going to go into May. But technically the retrograde is open then. And even when Mercury goes direct, Mars is still the ruler. Mars is still between Saturn and Neptune. So there's going to be a lot of things that people are saying, you know what? I have these goals. I'm going to be less about talking about it, more about doing about it. I'm not going to tell people what I'm doing. I'm just going to do it, right? And I'm going to kind of keep some of these things, some of these goals, some of these things to myself. So it might mean that you're not telling everybody what's going on. You're just focusing more on results. That's another way of looking at it. What else? And then we're going to see on the 28th. Oh, you know what? Let me go back to the 23rd really quick. Because this is going to be a full moon in Scorpio. There we go. There we go. So on the 23rd, okay, so we have the solar eclipse new moon on the 8th, full moon in Scorpio on the 23rd, 4 degrees of Scorpio. You have any personal planets? 2, 3, 4, 5 degrees, 6 degrees. You're going to be feeling this the most, especially with the fixed signs. All right, so Taurus, Leo, and Aquarius, you guys will feel this. This full moon, obviously, is the moon in opposition to the sun. When we have a full moon in Scorpio, it's weird because at least here in the Northern Hemisphere, it's springtime, right? But in order to have springtime, we have this full moon in Scorpio where we're realizing and recognizing everything that we had to change to get there. Scorpio is about death, sex, taxes, transformation, joint resources, secrets, things being exposed, intense emotions, right? We've got the moon moving through a Plutonian sign. So even when the moon goes through, Scorpio every 28 days, we're feeling it. This is tricky. On one hand, Mars is the traditional ruler. So Mars is right between Saturn and Neptune. So it's in no man's land. It's off in its ship at sea, kind of lost, going through some stormy weather. And on the flip side, Pluto is the modern day ruler, and this moon squares Pluto, and Pluto is squaring with the sun. So Pluto is like, he is the lord of this particular full moon. And he's saying, hey, everything collectively needs to change, and it can throw us all into a bit of a spiral. And we're like, what are we going to do? Right? It's at 4 degrees, so it's connected to Cancer. So it can be major changes and transformations on the home front with our family, with our emotions. We're thinking about the past. Obviously, in the background, thankfully, Mars is still sextiling Jupiter and Uranus. So we're like, yes, this thing is ending, but here's this new beginning. And like, it's kind of shock and awe and surprise. And we've also got, Venus that's still in close proximity to Chiron. So this is not an easy full moon. I will do a video about this as we get closer to this at the beginning of April, but this is definitely one that you guys are going to want to watch because it's going to kick a bit. All right, so then we're going to have on the 28th, Mars will conjunct Neptune. Okay. At 28 degrees. So this is also a Cancer degree. Well, Mars rules the North Node, so it's about our personal spiritual drive, where we're going visually, spiritually, emotionally. This is also a time where we're going to see more likelihood of people having immune system issues. I think in general, Saturn and Pisces is immune system issues, but once Mars hits Saturn and then it's between Neptune and we see a Mercury retrograde, I think we're going to see people who can be more prone to fevers, right? Solar eclipse in Aries. I've heard a lot of people still having issues with like COVID, RSV, pneumonia. Mercury in Aries retrograde can bring health issues, fever blisters, sunburns, issues with our face, redness, inflammation. I think it's a really good time to be learning about an anti-inflammatory diet. I think it's a really good time to be learning about whether or not you're getting enough adequate sunlight, if you're getting enough iron, if you want to be making changes with your body and going back to the diet, back to the gym, if you're wanting to, take new supplements. This is kind of what I'm seeing here. And I think with Mars conjunct Neptune, it's like people can be really freaked out about what's going on in their health, or they can be realizing old perspectives about health and wellness in the pharmaceutical kind of world has failed them, right? Saturn and Neptune, it's failed them. And so they're kind of taking health matters back into their own hands. That's one way of looking at it. Then we're going to see, and watch with Mars Neptune, like drinking and driving is going to be a thing. You're going to see that. Really dramatic storms and things that can impact visibility and mobility. We may see that there is like an uptick in, people having some hospitalizations, mental, emotional issues, especially this is at 28 degrees. It's about to be the last degree of the zodiac. So not only was that Mercury retrograde pretty gnarly, but people are still feeling the effects of it emotionally and psychologically. So obviously, this is a time to really pay attention to your mental health. If you need help, you're calling and you're asking, somebody for care. You're letting people know how you're feeling. You're checking in with other people and you're not feeling hopeless, because hopelessness can kind of come up with conjunctions in Pisces. What else? That's pretty much it. I mean, I do think that this is a time that I would just be really mindful that your energy levels will rise and fall. And usually Neptune is a time where we're kind of vibing out, and people can be more prone to drug and alcohol and substance abuse with Mars and Neptune here. And it can be a winding down of some kind of, military conflict or war conflict. That can happen because Neptune is kind of ending that. And then we're going to see on the 29th, Venus enters Taurus. So she's at home now. And now we've got some decent aspects in the skies. Now we've got a stellium that's building in Taurus, which is going to become really prominent in May. And as Venus moves through here, it looks like she's immediately going to be met with a moon Pluto the next day. So watch for that on the 30th, where the moon conjuncts Pluto and it squares Venus. That's kind of gnarly. And then also on the 30th, we are going to see, now other than the Venus-Pluto square, where we see obsession, fixation, power struggles with money and with love, that can definitely happen. And all this Taurus energy is like, I have what I have, it's mine. It can be quite possessive, or it can be really focused on security and stability. We've got Venus in its home sign, and then Mars enters Aries. I mean, the truth is like the end of the month, things get better, but it's going to take until the end of the month. And fortune favors the brave with all these planets that are going through Aries and retrograding. Those who are going to be, I think, the most, supported, the best supported, the most well off, the most financially successful and abundant are going to be people who are being proactive in the month of April. People who are like, I'm making sure I have my food, my resources, or my cash, or I'm starting a new side business, or I'm focusing more on my investments. It's like people who are going to be pioneering. All this Aries energy is about what can we do right now in this moment, not waiting, not saying, it'll be fine, nothing's going to happen, because this is a month where you can kind of get caught with your pants down if you don't feel like you're prepared for some of the energies that are kind of coming through. Obviously, Mars moving into Aries, it's being reborn. So we're going to see quite a strong period because Mars is going to reactivate that eclipse. It's going to conjunct the North Node. And we're not actually coming out of the Mercury retrograde shadow for a while. That's not going to be until Mercury hits 27 degrees. So until May 13th, okay? And look at what's happening around mid-May. Mars is conjunct the North Node, and then Venus, Uranus, Jupiter, and the Sun. What did I tell you? Those who were the most, I'm taking action, I'm doing this now, I'm getting prepared, will be the ones who are going to be the most physically and financially well off. They're going to be the ones who are going to catch the most blessings with these Jupiter-Uranus conjunctions. We're going to see a lot of people who are going to make a lot of money. And I don't know if it's going to be because they took, certain actions this month to reassess their finances and reinvest some things, or maybe they stockpiled some food. And so, if somebody needs it, they have something they can barter with. If somebody, went and decided they wanted to have some cash on hand, so they're able to kind of buy and transact and do things. It's yeah, you're going to see quite a big, significant, positive boom that's going to happen in May. So you have to look at where Aries is in your chart. That's where you're doing the rearranging and the reassessment so that you can receive all of the goodness that's going to come through the Taurus area of your chart. As you guys know, I will be here 4 days a week. I'm going to keep providing these videos for you. Definitely stay tuned because in this next week, we're going to talk all about Venus going into Aries. We have so many other things that we can discuss about some of these upcoming transits. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Give me a thumbs up and drop me a comment below and let me know what you think and what you're anticipating. I'd love to hear from you. And yeah, we will continue to kind of see how things go throughout this next month. Until next time, I'll catch all of you guys very soon. Enjoy the month of April. Enjoy that baptism by fire because we're all going to be reborn next month in May. Take care.